So this one I almost forgot to mention, so I feel terrible about that, but Grid Box Cut basically also now has an option for backfaces. So previously we added the ability that for users of Box they would be able to activate a mode called Grid, where basically you can cut with a box that's actually a grid. So if we just hold control to use this center snap point, we're basically now drawing a grid. But the thing about the grid is if we look at it, we're basically cutting a mesh into this, but there's no back face, which means that all of these pieces are connected. If we were to just press Control A and Visual Geometry to Mesh to make everything real, if I press L, we see that it actually selects everything, and that was just a small oversight on my side. So for this update, we added the option for basically fill back. So if I press Control Z to undo ever adding that operation, and we ensure that fill back is still checked, we will now draw our shape, which now looks a little bit more solid because it has a back to it. But when we click to apply, we've now applied this operation and every piece is now separated. Of course, when it comes to cutting something like this with so many booleans, sometimes guidance geometry is required. In fact, it looks like I just need to place one piece of guidance geometry here in order to assist it. But let's press Alt V and look at it, because I'm always interested in the unexpected. You know, there's a couple of ways in which we could have solved this. For example, let's say we didn't want to actually add a guidance edge. Let's say we wanted to solve it using just a boolean itself. Well, we could always just change it from fast to exact using the helper, and we see that that actually solves it, and we're able to complete this operation. But continuing on and not getting sidetracked, if I were to press Control A and do Visual Geometry to Mesh, that means that whenever I press L, this is its own individual piece. This is its own individual piece, this is its own individual piece. And you might be wondering, why would I even care about all these individual pieces? Well, if we press Alt V E just to go to EVHQ, we can press spacebar and just type in rigid body and just add active. And from here, let's activate the physics panel, and I'm going to press L, select this one, press P to separate the selection, and we're going to set this one to passive, which means that all of these are set to active. If we select all of them in edit mode and we press P and we choose separate by loose parts, they're now separated into loose parts. And the good thing about Blender is everything is still currently selected, which means that we could press Shift S and set our origin to the geometry, because that's what's going to be needed for this piece to work out. Everything's going to need its origin to be in the correct location. So if we press Shift Spacebar, we see that everything just kind of explodes outward, which is almost what we want. I might change this one to be mesh instead of convex hull, just to see if we can get all the pieces to fall out just like that. The next thing we can do as far as playing with rigid bodies is I like to go under the scene panel and go under gravity, or not gravity, rigid body world, and let's turn on split impulse and lower the speed to something like 0.2, and maybe even sub-steps per frame to something like 6. And then when we press spacebar, we get it happening in very slow motion. So just something random. Sometimes I'll go in Boxcutter and I'll just dice things up and then just play with the animation of them just to see what happens. You know, still just a guy playing with toys, I guess, but just a fun way to have a good time in Blender.